Have you ever wished your dog could actually tell you what they're thinking? Not just with looks or barks, but with words. Welcome to The Dog Who Asked for More, the podcast helping dog parents who feel stuck and overwhelmed by their pup finally let go of the guilt, learn to communicate clearly, and build the bond you've always dreamed of through a partnership-based approach that combines training, nutrition, and enrichment instead of chasing the quick fixes that don't actually work. I'm Em, and in this episode, you'll learn how Alexis used buttons and communication to give Bunny a voice and what surprised her along the way, why structure, patience, and curiosity are key to introducing Fluent Pet, and what this journey has taught Alexis about communication, skepticism, and redefining what's possible with our dogs. Alexis, would you tell me about Bunny, how you first got her, what sparked your curiosity about teaching her to communicate beyond typical cues, and how she inspired you down this path?
I got Bunny at 8 weeks old, knew absolutely nothing about dogs, nothing about behavior, nothing about how to select an appropriate dog for my lifestyle. But that's neither here nor there. Before bringing her home, it had been a long time since I'd had a dog. I had a couple of dogs when I was a child, but they weren't really my dogs. They were more family dogs. Came and went from the house, and they were really attached to my parents. But I was ready. I was ready for this sort of Lassie-esque relationship. I was really excited about it. I had the sort of life stability and the time and the intention to really offer a dog in my life everything that I had to give. So I was dreaming about this really connected relationship and this really profound communication. I came across Christina Hunger. She's a speech language pathologist. She was using recordable buttons with her dog. And I was like, this seems really sort of self-explanatory and it makes so much sense. Why wouldn't everyone be doing this? And so I started with an outside button. I had it waiting for Bunny by the door when she came home, and sort of thought in the same way that you can hold an apple up for a child and you can say apple and they will build that association. It made sense to me that the same would happen if I were to do that with a dog. So every time we went outside, I would press the button. She would hear outside coming from the button. I would say the word outside, then we would go outside. And after a couple of weeks of doing this, my partner and I were sitting at the table watching Netflix or something. Bunny was over by the door, standing by her button, and I could see her looking down at the button and then up at us and down at the button and up at us. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see her lifting her paw and she just smashes that button and she like whips her head up. Her ears fly out. She gets this really excited look on her face. And I'm like, oh my God, did you just say outside? Do you want to go outside? And I lost my mind, acted like a total fool. We went outside, had an outside party, and it was game on after that. I started affixing these buttons in sort of a grid-like pattern to a giant piece of plywood with Velcro. And I added play and mom and dad and bunny and come and help and some other words. And she took to them really quickly. It seems for a lot of learners in the community that the biggest hurdle is helping them to understand that they can control outcomes in their world by pressing a button. Very quickly went from one outside button by the door to about 100 buttons. About 6 months into that process, I came into contact with Leo Trottier, who's my business partner now. He's a cognitive scientist. He was developing a canine-specific AIC device. And for those of you who don't know what AIC is, that's what we call these devices now, augmentative interspecies communication, AIC. Through iterative design, Leo and I prototyped the hex tiles that you see now and smaller buttons and speakers on top. And all of these decisions sort of informed by community input, because at this time there were like thousands of people who were really interested in pursuing this and learning what their animal companions had to say on a deeper level. Several months later, Federico Rossano, who's the head of the Comparative Cognition Lab at UCSD, started what is now the largest citizen science canine cognition and communication study ever. Federico has 2 published peer-reviewed papers out right now talking about buttons and their use and is this clever Hans? Are these intentional presses? Are word combinations cued? So all of this sort of information. We've got another study under review right now and lots more down the pike. So these are some things that I'm really excited about looking forward.
It is so cool that you guys are really diving so deep into this because there is so much to learn from this. I've been watching Bunny for years now. You guys have been doing this for a while, and watching her button count grow, watching what seems to be her understanding of things grow, and just her learning how to express exactly what she wants has been such a cool journey. I can't even imagine the difference between when you started and where you are now. So when you discovered button communication and Fluent Pet, Where were your hopes and what surprised you the most when you first started?
Great question. I think my hopes were just that I would have this really deep level of communication and, oh, who's
This is
that?
Toby. This is Toby.
Toby. Hi, Toby. What a cutie.
Hey,
So yeah,
Dad.
my hopes were just to have a really deep level of communication and the deepest level of connection possible. I really just wanted to have a bond that people bring dogs into their lives because they're aware of whether they've had a dog or not. They're aware of the depth of this connection that exists. 40,000 years of coevolution is a lot. It makes sense that there is a lot of potential for us to connect and communicate in really powerful ways because of that, right? So that's what I wanted. I wanted to experience that. So I didn't really have any specific hopes for the buttons other than that. I thought quite anthropocentrically at first. It would be really cute to hear my dog say, I love you in human words. And I'm just so embarrassed by that thought now, right? Because these buttons are so much more than that. But I talk about the buttons as being a tool to offer our non human companions choice, agency, and control. But my thinking about that has started to shift. It is that for sure. But also now, I think one of the biggest impacts of this system is that it changes the way humans listen, right? There's something about a dog pressing a button and us hearing a word in our language, as anthropocentric as that is, that allows something in our brain to go, oh my gosh, they've got something to say. And we start listening in a different way. We start paying more attention. A bit more of a dialogue starts to emerge, which I think for some dogs in homes with humans, it's not much of a dialogue. We're going for a walk now. You may get to sniff, you may not. You get your food at 7 and that's it. And it's just this one kibble. There's not much feedback that's going on. Like you get pets when I feel like being cuddly with you. So it sort of takes it from this really hierarchical dynamic to a state of the scales being a little bit more balanced and of living with a dog or cat, because there are many different species that are doing this now, being more of a partnership.
That's something that I love about having a relationship with dogs. Partnership is a word that I use in my training and my teachings with dogs because it should be a partnership, right? This is something that we're trying to accomplish together. We should be trying to communicate. Somebody a while back made a comment to me about how we don't see dogs as intelligent as us because they don't speak, which is basically what you just said. And it is so true. We judge dogs' intelligence by the things that they do and how they behave, but we don't actually think about their thought process and how their behavior is a reflection of whether or not they are getting the things that they need to satisfy their emotions, their thoughts, and all of their wants and everything. So I think that giving them a voice in this very unique way is something that would be really cool if we could give to more dogs. I talk to my dogs constantly. I am that person that treats my dogs like they're little humans and they understand every single word I say. And I talk to them all day long. But I'm also very curious about what makes them happy, to the point that I have gotten certifications and become a dog trainer because I want to make sure that they live an enriched life. And I understand not everybody can do that. I totally understand that. But if we're going to invite these creatures into our homes and we're going to ask them to be part of our day to day lives, we should be investing a little bit more time and energy into their happiness and their quality of life versus just saying, sit on that couch and be quiet while I'm doing this. And you
Yeah.
do that so beautifully with Bunny.
Thank you. I completely agree. I'm a huge advocate for balancing those scales as much as possible, for recognizing that dogs and cats, all companion animals, are captive animals. We really owe them as much agency as we can give them. We owe them as much choice and control over their own internal and external experiences as we can give them. Really promote the quality of life that they deserve.
I completely agree. It's my understanding that you didn't come from a cognition research background. So, how did you figure things out as you went, especially when you were having moments of doubt or uncertainty with how she was actually using the buttons?
Did not come from a behavior, cognition, scientific background at all. I was an artist right up until I started teaching Bunny the Buttons. I'm still an artist. And I think that creativity and curiosity, which is something that you've mentioned a couple of times so far, really guided a lot of my decisions. I didn't have, what's the saying? I didn't have a foot in the fire. That's not what it is. A stake. I didn't have a stake in the game. A foot in the fire. Oh, good. Wow, it's been a morning, obviously. I didn't really have any stake in this. There was nothing I was trying to prove. This was just like a personal exploration with my dog to see what could happen, to see what I could learn, to see where we could go with our communication and connection. And I was sharing it online. Of course, she blew up and people had lots of opinions. But I think coming from a place of this is a space full of curiosity and potential and not a space of I've got to prove something and I've got to systematize everything I'm doing so that I can validate and replicate and reproduce and chart. And that wasn't at all my process. My process was let's explore together. Let's see what concepts you're interested in communicating about. Let me start paying attention to you in a different way. And at the beginning, right? Because my understanding of this obviously evolved. I came to know a lot more about behavior. I came to be a certified professional dog trainer. I came to know a lot more about cognition because I was curious. But at the beginning, I was just adding words that seemed like words a kid would want to use early on, right? And I wasn't thinking, what words would this dog, this non-human, like to use? And the more I saw how she was using the buttons and what words she was choosing to use on a regular basis, that sort of informed, okay, so she's using the outside button a lot. What does she do when she goes outside? Well, she sniffs, she sits, she looks at birds. So these are the things that are of interest to her. These are the things that I should add to the board. I don't need to add words like love you, which I did, and it was adorable, right? Still one of my favorite words. But we know that there are so many things that our dogs are communicating all of the time without words. They can obviously tell us when they want to go outside. They can tell us when they want to play. They can tell us so many things without buttons. So I became really interested in exploring more specifically how she was perceiving the world in ways that I wouldn't be able to understand just by looking at her body language. I wanted to know what she was interested in smelling. Does she want to go outside for a walk or does she just want to sit and look at the birds? Because it seems to me like she doesn't want to walk. She just wants to watch the birds. So I'll add deck and sit and smell and bird and see how she starts using those and if those are things that she requests.
You walked us through Bunny's early outside training, how you started with the outside button, and you just did a really great job of talking about how you added buttons and how you decided to add those buttons. Curiosity is such an important thing. Dogs are curious learners, and if we can be as curious as our dogs are when we're learning with them, it really goes well together and we have better results. The thing that always gets me with Bunny is that you use a lot of abstract words like you and feel and pronouns. How did you model those to her? How did you incorporate those into what she was already doing in a way that helped her make sense of it? Because she does a really good job of linking words together.
At the beginning, I think I would use pronouns in conjunction with the name of the person that I was referring to. So I would say like, I, mom, go potty, or you, Bunny, went park walk. So I would use those two in conjunction. And then I faded out the names and I was just using I, you, or we. If I were to model we, I would say we, Bunny, Otter, Mom, went outside, and use those in as many contexts as possible, in as many ways as possible, so that she's not just focused on, okay, I means me, but only if we're going on a walk. And then she starts experimenting and exploring, right? And if she uses them correctly, I model them in the same way. And I say, yes, that's right. Great job. And if she uses them incorrectly, I would maybe use an oops button and I would correct her. And by correct, I just mean I would use the sequence that I feel is the correct sequence. And sometimes she would be like, no, that's not what I meant. And she would press the same sequence again. And I was like, okay, so either something's getting lost in translation here or I'm an idiot. She means something totally different. So much of this process is really, really living in that curiosity, because there are going to be moments where what you hear coming from the buttons doesn't make sense, right? And does it not make sense because she doesn't understand what those buttons mean? Maybe. Does it not make sense because she's trying to communicate something that she doesn't have buttons for? And this is the closest approximation. So it's sort of like a fact-finding mission. And this, again, this sort of fact-finding mission, this like staying in this curiosity allows us to perpetuate relational communication with our animal companions and to really dive into that connection, because you're really thinking about, okay, what could this have meant? What does it mean the way I heard it? Okay, it means nothing to me. What could it mean? So then you're at the board, you're modeling different combinations, you're offering choices, right? You're engaging with your learner. And whether you get to the bottom of what that exact combination of words meant or not, this is a beautiful thing. This is what we want. This is what our learners want, right? They want us to be spending time with them, to be engaging, to be offering choice, to be getting curious.
I love that. That's such a unique experience. We have buttons. We have Fluent Pet buttons. We got them very early on after we started following you guys, and Fitz got really good at them. He's a very curious learner. He loves to interact. He loves to get involved and try new things. He's really good at tricks. And so I knew that teaching him to push the button wouldn't be difficult at all. And we got up to about 8 buttons. But my little dog here that you saw earlier, Toby, he does not like the way the foam smells. And so he has peed on the buttons so many times that we have had to stop using them. But it really is fun to watch Fitz communicate that with them. And I know if I got them back out, he would probably just pick right back up where we left off. We'd probably have to do a little bit of refresher. But it's so interesting to me. And I've seen this with Christina Hunger too, talking about how dogs use words in different orders than people would, or they emphasize certain words and use certain buttons over and over and over again and say things in ways that we as humans wouldn't. But that also makes me think about how differently their brain works and their level of intelligence, because when they don't understand the human structure of literacy and all of the stuff that we have, all these rules that we have for speaking and all of that. But it's very interesting to me to see how differently all of the dogs who use the buttons and the cats express themselves and in what order they use the buttons. So I like that you don't just take it at face value. I like that you try to make sure that you understand exactly what she's saying to you, because that's the most important part, is that we're interacting, we're understanding, and we're meeting those needs. It's just such a cool thing that you're doing with her.
Thank you. And to your point about the different learners, she is sassing her brothers hard right now. She's like, everyone get settled. Get settled right now. We've got
My
little
goodness.
10 and Otter. And then
Guys,
Bunny's right over there.
Bunny, the
Yeah.
queen herself.
The queen herself. So to your point about how individuals communicate, it's so true, right? Obviously, all individuals have preferences and favorite words, and not all dogs love food, not all dogs love play, whatever. But there are some really interesting consistencies that I think are fascinating. One of them is the button, which is how we indicate a question. And as modelers, as humans who are teaching our dogs to use these buttons, we will typically model it like Bunny want go park. And we'll put it at the end, just like we do in English, right? We put a question mark at the end as we write. We have an inflection at the end of our sentences. But most learners who have this button, this question mark button, will use it at the beginning, which is fascinating to me because they don't have this sort of tonality that we have in speech. So do they need to indicate at the beginning of a sentence that they're about to ask a question? So that's one sort of consistency that we see that I think is really fascinating. And another is that there are certain word combinations that multiple learners have used to mean the same thing. There are, I think, 2 dogs that have used the combination squeaker and car to refer to siren, like a siren outside, or water bone, a combination to refer to ice. That's been used by multiple learners. Settle sound to mean shut up or be quiet. So it's really fascinating when there are similar words that end up on boards. The patterns of use of these words can also be similar across users, which is really, really fascinating to me. And I'd love to, at some point in this study, get more information on that.
Love to see the results of that study. That would be really cool. Your bone and the siren one. Those are great. Like, so funny because, again, I don't think we give our dogs enough credit because they're so smart. And for them to come up with the water bone, that I want that ice cube. That's their own little way of communicating with us. If dogs could talk, I think that they would say some pretty funny stuff. And I think that we would laugh a lot if dogs could talk. I really do.
Yeah. There was a phase where Bunny was calling people out for pooping.
Yeah.
She'd say,
Remember that?
Dad went poop, friend went poop, poop smell. And it was, I don't know, it was like 6 months to a year. And it was like daily. And it made me laugh. Thankfully, I wasn't the one being called out, so I could laugh at it. It wasn't as embarrassing for me as it was for some other people in my life. But yeah, it seems like a lot of our learners also have a sense of humor.
It makes sense to me that dogs would have a sense of humor. And in my brain, I think that dogs are probably really hilarious. We just miss the joke a lot.
Yes, I agree. Like when they roll in dead things, that's hilarious to them, right? It is not funny to me. Should I laugh?
Funny to me.
Debatable.
I usually laugh and then I'm upset that I have to give the bath, but
Laugh
it
and
is
then
what
cry.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, technically, they're probably crying at that point too, because we put them in the bathtub and they were just so proud of their accomplishment. So I guess we're both on
Yeah.
the same page. A lot of people worry about bias or overinterpreting button presses. How do you distinguish what's a meaningful communication from coincidence?
I think there are a lot of ways to answer this question. The first would be, why are you concerned about bias? If this is an opportunity, if you're not trying to prove anything, if you're not a scientist trying to research this, and your aim is to try and understand your animal companion, to try and offer them more choice, agency, and control, that is the product of this. Any which way you frame it, if you go in with that intention, it doesn't really matter. My dog presses, love you, walk outside. And I'm like, she loves me. She wants to go for a walk outside because that's the most natural interpretation. When I open the door and get ready for a walk and she doesn't want to go, we don't go. I've misinterpreted that button press, but if she's showing me that she doesn't want to go, we don't go. And we can circle back to that later. Is there something else you want? Do you want a chewy on the deck or something? So maybe I'm then able to offer her choice and control over what happens outside. So I don't think that's as big a problem as some people think it is if you're not involved in the science. In terms of really trying to monitor how much confirmation bias there is, I really am careful to try and confirm that everything I know about dog body language and the context of the situation is congruent with what's being pressed with buttons. As much as possible, if Bunny presses bird and then she goes and looks at a bird, or if she's been looking at a bird and then comes and presses bird, it's hard to deny that there's some contextually appropriate communication going on there. If she presses bird and I don't see one, I don't see her looking at one, maybe I just ask for more information. Like, do you remember bird? Do you smell bird? Do you want to go outside and look at a bird? And again, this is an opportunity for me to gather more information, to offer her more choice, agency, and control over the environment and try to get to the bottom of something. She's pressed it for one reason or another, right? And some people say that dogs are pressing all the buttons because they get attention. And I would counter with, anytime I say a word, that's for attention. If I'm saying anything to you, it's because I want your attention. I want you to hear me. And there's something very, very reinforcing about being heard and understood. So just engaging in this dialogue, presuming competence, which is really, really important. And that kind of goes along with confirmation bias. You want to presume that what they're saying is intentional. You want to explore it. You want to get curious. And if you can't get to the bottom of it, offer them choice. Offer them choice. And maybe you'll get to the bottom of it. Maybe you won't, but you've had a lovely interaction that's two-way.
Again, that choice and understanding, I love that that's the foundation of your whole premise here. You're trying to communicate with her, you're trying to understand with her, but you're also giving her choices based on that understanding. And if there's a miscommunication, I love that you don't say, oh, well, you still have to go on this walk because that's what you just asked me for with the buttons. And maybe, like you said, she was remembering the last walk and she was telling you she loved you for taking her on that walk. There's so many different ways to interpret that. And just automatically assuming that it's, oh, well, the dog's doing it for this reason or that reason. I mean, we train dogs to do so many different things. And they understand if I do this, then this happens. So the jump between I hit this button so that I can do this thing is really not that far. And so for people to get so lost on that, it just really is probably very frustrating to you. It's frustrating to me.
It is. It is frustrating, but it's also fine. I have always considered myself a hopeful skeptic. And now that I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of animals do this, I get messages in my inbox all day long that are people telling me these really profound moments where their cat said potty ouch. They went to the vet, it had a bladder infection. Their dog said bone ouch. They weren't finishing their bone. They went to the vet and they had jaw cancer that they caught early enough that it didn't require surgical intervention. A cat said leg ouch. Turns out it had an ACL tear. There are some really powerful and profound things happening here. And that's not to say that we should in any way abandon caution. Right? I think it's really important to be measured and cautious with this. But I think that the pros really outweigh the cons, especially because far and away, the people who are using buttons with animals are not behavior professionals. They're ordinary people that have dogs and cats that love them so much. And just like I was when I got Bunny, that want to have a deeper connection and communication. And this facilitates, like I mentioned before, a different level of active listening. And it facilitates the companion animal being offered more choice, agency, and control.
You said initially when you started out, you kind of set up a looser structure on a board, and then you switched to the Fluent Pets with the mats. What are the differences that you notice in the layout, the structure, the ease of use between those two methods?
Night and day. It's really challenging to compartmentalize a grid of buttons that's just sort of endless. So when we were developing the hex tiles, we thought it important for them to have a right side up and a right side down. So you could contextualize what's up, what's down. You could sort of orient them in space. We wanted the different tiles to, in essence, be different categories of things. So you've got like your places are one color, your people are another color, your actions or another, your foods, whatever the case may be. And we picked the colors based on the color spectrum available to dogs and cats so that they could differentiate tonally between the colors. And we organized it based on the Fitzgerald key so that in theory, and we didn't know if this would be important or not, they could learn syntax and grammar. The Fitzgerald key was developed by Edith Fitzgerald in the early 1900s. She taught deaf children how to communicate using this system by moving left to right, subject, verb, object. So we thought that something might also be the case with our non-human learners if we arranged our tiles based on that. Now, to me personally, I don't really care about syntax and grammar. I know I have some interesting words that would lead somebody to believe that maybe I do, like I, you, we, is, was, those sorts of things. Again, I was just curious about those words. What I think is most important is that words are categorized. So if you're looking at a giant mass of buttons, you're not just like, okay, where do I find the mom button randomly over here? You'll be able to see, okay, my people live over here. Mom lives in the center of those 6 buttons. So in order to compartmentalize them, you keep them in categories based on type of word, and then they're easier for our learners to motor map. And you'll see that a lot of learners end up being able to use them sort of without looking, like a touch typist. They get familiar enough with the layout, they can just sort of go, it's pretty fun.
It's definitely like a person with a keyboard. It becomes muscle memory at that point. You know where the buttons are and you don't even have to think about it. That's really neat. I guess I never thought about it like that before, but it makes sense to me that it is just a pattern, and dogs are the masters of pattern. They
Mhm.
understand how things work in routine and pattern so much faster than people do. It's crazy. Again, how intelligent dogs are. There have been a lot of moments where Bunny has communicated some crazy, unexpected things to you. Can you tell us a few of your favorite of those moments and how they really changed the way that you looked at her?
I think the first most profound moment was when she told me she had a foxtail in her paw. She said, "Mad ouch, stranger paw." Then she came over to me and she put her paw in my hand, and I found a foxtail in the webbing between her toes. And that was the moment where I really recognized that this system could be used for very powerful self advocacy. Our dogs do not tell us when they have pain. I don't know the specific numbers, but the statistics are pretty horrific about how many dogs are living in chronic undiagnosed pain. Because if you can see it, the pain's like a 7. But even a 5 is a 5 out of 10. That's a lot of pain. And you're not going to see it at that level in a lot of dogs. So for our dogs to be able to tell us with specificity, or cats, sorry, I have dogs, so I keep saying dogs, but it's dogs, cats, any species. There are all sorts of species that are using these buttons. For them to be able to tell us with specificity when and exactly where they're in pain is a really, really powerful tool, and something that is quite difficult for us to glean just by looking at their body language, unless we're very, very good at analyzing gait and posture and really looking at those subtle signs, which the average person is not. I'm not even very good at. And then there were a ton of communications that inspired a conspiracy theory online. The conspiracy theory is that Bunny saw herself in a mirror, gained consciousness, had to go on antidepressants. Some of the conspiracy theorists say she's dead now. She's not. She's fine. I showed you her earlier. She's not on antidepressants. She is on anxiolytics because she's anxious, like a lot of humans. This is a very normal thing. And those explorations, like looking in a mirror and saying, who this, or why dog? To me, these feel very much like a toddler just exploring their world. Like, why is the grass green? Why do I have 2 ears? Like, oh God, this child is having an existential crisis. No, they're just exploring their world. They're just being curious. And I think it's really, really a beautiful opportunity to tap into that curiosity, and such a fun way to explore the world in in a new way. These aren't things that we would have thought of 6 years ago, being able to explore with a non-human. And who knows what's going on in their minds when they are pressing these buttons, how those concepts are connected specifically. But we can get a general idea and we can explore together, which I think is the most important thing. And we can continue to remain curious and connected in that way.
The pain thing for me is one of the most relevant reasons for people to teach their dogs how to use the buttons, because I was a vet tech for almost 10 years, and people wait to bring their dogs in until it's too late sometimes, until it's
Mhm.
past the point. The things that they could have caught earlier, medicated, and they're infected, now they have to have surgery, all of the things. Or the dog is, on its deathbed because of it. Dogs are really good at existing in the current state that they are and not complaining about it. They're just really good at it, which says to me that they must have a much higher pain tolerance than we do as humans. I have a chronic illness. I live with a level 5 pain every day. So I
Mm.
can tell you that it is not comfortable, and I would never want my dog to experience that on a day to day basis. So I'm somebody that probably pays way too close attention to my dogs. And I think that's a combination of the chronic illness and the vet tech history.
Mhm.
But my vet is always impressed when I come in and I say he's having a pancreatic flare up or he's got an ear infection and it barely tests positive. I just know very well to read my dogs. And like you said, not everybody knows how to do that, but not everybody is invested in our dogs as you and I are. Anything that we can give ourselves and our dogs as a way to communicate and have that advocacy is super important. So I love that you have used that and helped other people use that in a way that alleviates a chronic illness, a pain, a potential really bad diagnosis. That's just such a cool thing. And then also with the things that Bunny does, I would love to touch on the thing that changed how Bunny was for me the most in your content, which is the dreaming. I would love to
Mm.
know how the heck you figured out that she was communicating to you that it was a dream, because I remember you posting those videos and I was like, I don't understand what's happening here at all. And then you were like, she's talking about her dreams. And I was like, wait, what? So it was totally unexpected for me. So could you kind of walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah. So at the time, before she had a dream button, she had a night button, a talk button, and a sleep button. And she started using those three words in combination like all day long, every day. She'd be like, night talk, sleep, night talk, sleep, 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 sleep. And she would say these over and over and over again. And the first thing I thought, because it would be sort of a literal translation, is that I was talking in my sleep at night, which I used to do. So it's possible, but my partner said that's not happening and he wasn't talking in his sleep. So we kept thinking about it. We're not coming up with any answers. She keeps using this combination for weeks. Finally, I talked to one of the research interns and they suggested that maybe she was talking about dreams and that next time she was having a sort of active dream where she was like twitching and chirping and all of that, that I gently wake her and ask her what talks sleep. So that's exactly what I did. Next time she was dreaming, she was sort of like moving her paws and barking. And I went over and very gently touched her and I said, hey, bunny. And she woke up kind of startled. And I was like, what talks sleep? And she immediately got up and went over to the board and pressed stranger animal, which is exactly out of the button she has or had at the time, exactly what I would expect a dog to say they were dreaming about. Stranger animal, like some unknown animal in my dream that I was chasing or whatever. And then I added a dream button and she started using that and never used the night talk sleep combination ever again. We haven't talked about dreams in a while, but she was able to tell me that she dreams in smells and sounds and not visually. And that blew my mind too, because of course she does, right? Like it's very easy for us as humans to be so visually oriented because that's our primary sense. But it's not for dogs. So of course she dreams in smells and sounds. Just really, really interesting stuff to explore.
What a profound communication. Like seriously, that makes sense to me. Smells and sounds for dogs. They respond to smells and sounds based on the way that they move throughout life, too. Whether they're looking for a cue from us or they're smelling us cooking bacon in the kitchen, that is going to automatically redirect their attention. So that makes a lot of sense to me, too. And I agree with you as well on the stranger animal in the dream. Of course, it's some random squirrel that's throwing things at them out of the tree and chattering at them, and they're trying to
Totally.
chase it up the trees. I have a very big feeling that Toby definitely chases chipmunks in his dreams. He definitely chases them. He's gotten older and he doesn't really chase a whole lot of things anymore, but those chipmunks are the devil. And every time he's twitching in his sleep, I'm like, oh, he's back in his youth chasing those chipmunks again. So
It's
I think it's
adorable.
really neat. It is adorable. I think it's really neat that you've given Bunny a way to express those things and communicate them, because how neat is it that we get to learn something about another species, again, by communicating with words that we understand? And that just proves how smart dogs are, because they're using a language that is not native to them in any way, shape, or form. And they're painting a picture for us that we can say, "Oh, okay, let me help you in this direction. Let me understand your dreams. Let me calm your fears. Let me make sure that you have medication for your anxiety or take the foxglove out of your paw," because you gave them an outlet for that. To me, is this endless possibilities of what we could do with this. And I think that you've done such a really amazing job of showing the depth and the breadth of what is possible here because you're constantly changing things up for Bunny and trying different things. But what do you think was the hardest part of the button journey? Like a time where it got difficult, you nothing was happening and you actually were like, is this working? Is this helping her or are we just spinning our wheels here?
I've had a lot of moments like that along the way. Honestly, things got harder for me when she sort of blew up on social media because I didn't expect the amount of negative feedback that I was getting. And a lot of that feedback was like, this is fake. This woman is dumb. Dogs aren't capable of this. And I hadn't for a second presumed that dogs wouldn't be capable of this. Like, why wouldn't they be capable of this? It seems like fairly basic one-to-one conditioning. And I didn't know anything about behavior. And so it just felt really natural. I wasn't overthinking it. And I was having some really remarkable results and I was learning some interesting things. So yeah, other people got in the way of our progress, just the influx of negative feedback. I'm really thankful for the research that's coming out. And we, as a company, and I personally go to a ton of conferences and trade shows. And I can see every time that we do that the needle is moving, that more industry professionals are coming up and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I'm doing this with my dogs. I have a lot of clients that I'm teaching how to use buttons. Whereas a couple of years ago, I don't even know if we would have been welcomed at these conferences. So it's nice to see that there are enough people in the world now that are using this and having really remarkable experiences with their animal companions, that the needle is being moved in a way that feels really progressive. And it's easier for me to let some of the negativity roll off my back. But yeah, I think that really negatively influenced me in terms of, am I crazy? Is this all like, am I just hearing what I want to hear? And so I really had to go through a process of like self-examination. And then I had to really go through a process too of asking myself, why am I doing this? And that's when I came to, oh, this is really quite anthropocentric, like asking a non-human to communicate in our language so that we can understand them when they already communicate beautifully. It was a huge shift for me because I wasn't doing that exactly, but it really made me focus on what is the purpose of this? How do we remove the anthropocentricity? I need to stop saying that word from this system. So how do we make it about the dogs? How do we allow this to serve us both and to serve people who don't know anything about behavior? Because that's what we really want. Most people who have dogs, they're not experts in behavior, but they want to have this level of communication and connection. So really centering the learner's experience. What are they interested in? What are they motivated in? And of course, that's key for success too, because if you're building a button board for a dog that doesn't like food and all you've got is food buttons, they're not going to use them. If you built a button board for me and you put the words bro and moist on the board, I wouldn't use them, right? So it's really about getting to know the individual, putting words and concepts on the board that are really salient to their experience. And in order to do that, you have to be listening to them. You have to be observing them. You have to get to know them on a deeper level.
For me, it has always been what can the dog do, not what can't the dog do. I really don't like to put limitations on things with dogs because while every dog is different and maybe not every dog will be good at buttons, maybe not every dog will be interested in buttons, and that's totally fine. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that because just like one of your kids might like art and one of them might like math, there might not be a crossover between the two things. So I don't think that we should ever force our dogs to try to do things that they don't like. Like you said, if they're not food motivated, don't give them a bunch of food buttons because that's not going to be interesting or fun for them. But if they like the flirt pole and they like to play tug and they like to play fetch and maybe they like their swift paws, put those things on the board so that they can do the things that they like and they'll probably start interacting with it quite a bit more. So it's a lot about experimenting and trying different things and being open to those results and not putting your dog in a mold because your dog is unlike anybody else's dog. And while, these buttons work for Bunny, they might not work for Fitz, they might not work for Toby, they might not work for these other cats and these other dogs down the road. So it really does have to be a very personalized process. I think that everybody goes through that with social media. I think we all are like, is what I'm doing, is this selfish? Is this authentic? People are being mean to me. But I also think that if you're not doing it right, then you wouldn't have haters. You're doing something that makes people uncomfortable because it is a big, huge leap into a gap that most people never even considered. Obviously, through like Disney movies and things, we've all been, oh, it would be awesome if we could put that collar on our dog like Doug and have our dog talk to us. Well, this is just a different way of expressing that. And when big shifts like this happen, sometimes people get scared. So I really admire you for pushing through all of that negative feedback because you have a lot of followers. I know I've seen some of the comments that come through on your content, and I'm just like, woo, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. I don't know how you ignore some of that. I really admire that you have continued to push through and just continue to focus on you and Bunny and not get lost in the noise.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, my tip for other people who might be experiencing this is just don't read the comments. Don't look at them. It's important to be getting feedback and to know what people are saying, but do it like once a month. Just get a broad overview. Don't look at it daily and take what serves you and leave the rest behind. Block. There are people who are cruel for the sake of cruelty. And if you are remaining authentic and if your mission is pure, that's cheesy as hell, but stay true to that. Like what am I trying to do here? What is my goal? My goal is to help companion animals have more choice, agency, and control, to balance the scales. Do I feel like that is what I am actively accomplishing? Yes. Okay, then I'm going to continue to do that, right? Because that's the direction that I want to be moving in, and that's what I see happening. So I'm on the right track.
You are on the right track. So on the flip side, then, tell us some of the big breakthroughs that made you stop and go, wow, I can't believe this just happened, or is this really happening?
Yeah, again, with the pain, I mean, the pain stuff is the number one for me. Animal companions being able to advocate for their own physical health, to say they want their medicine and when they want it, for us to know when they need it, for them to be able to say, I'd like to go to the vet. Elsie Talks is one of my favorite accounts right now. Elsie is the cat. Her human is Mary Robinette. Mary Robinette takes a button board into the vet and uses them with the vet and Elsie in that situation. And it's just like incredible the difference it's made in her levels of stress at the clinic. So anything related to pain and personal physical advocacy is just huge. The power that these buttons have for facilitating collaborative care is phenomenal. Being able to label body parts, just having buttons for ear, head, nose, butt, back, leg, and for our learners to be able to tell us when and where they want massage, or if they want their nails trimmed, or when, or obviously if they're in pain. Just so powerful. I mean, that's just one of the biggest breakthroughs, obviously. The complexity with which Bunny has used her words in moments of sort of emotional experiences has been really profound for me. I remember this one time where my partner had just come home from work, and normally he gets home from work and he stays home from work, but he was going to go get takeout. So he left, and my Bunny, she loves her routine, and he left and she went over to the board and she pressed, "We love you. Why went?" And to me, it was crazy for so many reasons, right? It's very sweet, obviously, but she's using like a shared emotion. She used the word we, group pronoun, plural pronoun, love you, the shared emotion, asking a question, why, which animals are said not to be able to do, right? Mostly, and a past tense. That just the complexity of all of those words put together to create that sentiment was really powerful for me. Let me see. What are some of her other? I mean, I really enjoyed when she was in that highly exploratory phase, like asking in a mirror, who is this? And asking, am I a dog or I am a human? Or saying, no, I'm a human, and trying to figure out how we're different and how we're the same. All of this sort of what feels like high level information gathering and processing is not something that I expected, right? And of course, I'm open and I'm curious and like, this is incredible. What is going on? So some of those moments, again, just brought my understanding of what our potential is to a new level.
How this has changed you as a person.
I'm a completely different person now than when I was then. Yeah. I mean, in so many ways. I was an artist. Now I am very involved in dog behavior and training and cognition. I live in a different space. I have 3 dogs now instead of 0 dogs. I mean, it's changed my life in every possible way. It's changed the way I think about living with non-humans completely, right? Like I had no idea what I was getting into. Like I said, I knew nothing about behavior. And Bunny is highly sensitive, very bossy, reactive, and in chronic pain. So it was a very, very steep learning curve. And I had to, I was going to say I had to learn it all, but I gladly learned it all. It's like, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to learn from you and to support you and for us to like move through the world together.
It's interesting to me how much dogs teach us and we don't even realize it, especially after we don't have that dog in our life anymore because unfortunately they don't live as long as we do, and how we carry those lessons into the next part of our life because of the lessons that that specific dog taught us. So it's interesting to me to see where you go from here because you've learned so much from Bunny. And of course, you apply that to Otter and 10 as well throughout your journey with them. But when you start over again with another dog, it'll be so interesting to see how that builds for you. And what a beautiful thing, I think, to have been changed by a dog, to
Mhm.
learn to focus and love something that is so precious and so innocent and just so devout to us as humans, and really take that time to cater to them and their needs. So I think that your journey is just so beautiful, and I love that you put so much spirit into it and that you put so much love into it and that you are constantly trying to find ways to grow with it. It's just it is very inspiring.
Thank you so much. We
Yeah.
appreciate that. Otter appreciates that.
Hi, Otter. For someone who's listening that is intrigued by this conversation, but maybe a little bit nervous, if you could tell somebody to start with 3 buttons, what would those 3 buttons be and how should they model them?
Yeah, so we actually came up with a really sweet, simple, easy protocol that starts with 3 buttons, just like you mentioned. We recommend starting with concepts that are highly motivating to most learners. And what we found is that a food related concept is usually pretty easy to model multiple times throughout the day. All of these first 3 words should be very easy to say yes to multiple times a day in the beginning because you want to build enthusiasm around the board and you want to be pressing that button, saying that word, and reinforcing as much as possible. Starting with a food related button is really easy. Kibble, snack is a good one. You don't want to start with something like dinner because you can only give them dinner once a day. So if you give them a button like kibble or snack, you can press, toss a piece of kibble, press, toss a piece of kibble. So they're hearing that, they're seeing the action, they're getting the treat. It's a fun little game. They're at the board. And you can do that for like 30 seconds and 15 treats a couple times a day. And that's a lot of reps. Another category that we like is a play related category. It could just be the button play, or if they have a favorite type of play, like flirt pole or chase or tug or ball, you can give them a more specific, but you press that button, you engage in a little bit of their favorite play, and then you stop, and then you repeat that several times a day, just saying yes as much as possible, keeping it short and sweet and fun. And then the third is something affiliative, like cuddles or scratches, or for cats, oftentimes it's brush, whatever type of physical affection they like. And with this one, you want to make sure that you're doing consent checks and that as you're modeling it, that's something that they actually want to opt into, because not all learners are going to be equally motivated by each of these categories. But these are 3 categories that most learners typically seem to be motivated by and are really easy to model multiple times a day at the board and say yes to a lot in the beginning.
Really like that you mentioned the consent thing because I would love to know about the lessons that you've learned about boundaries, frustration, or when to take a step back when it comes to Bunny's autonomy.
But yeah, she needs a lot of autonomy. She needs a lot of consent tests. She has very clear boundaries, but it took me a while to learn them, even with her being so clear, because I didn't know what certain signals meant. But I mean, I recommend with all dogs, if they come to you and you think they want scritches, give them a few scritches, remove your hands, see if they re-engage. Do they get closer to you? Do they put that spot back on your hand, wiggle waggling their tail with a soft open mouth and loose wiggly body language? That's a pretty good sign. And I'll do that all the time with all of my pets. Like right here, we can do a little consent test. Do you want? So she comes in, she's wagging her tail. You can't see it. I do a little bit of scritches. I stop. Do you want more? She keeps her head there. Her little tail's wagging that you can't see it. So she wants more. Yeah. Do you want some more? And she's just staying right there. She's like, yes, I'm ready for more. So I do this with all my dogs. And I think it's just really important to be, as I mentioned earlier, observing their body language. You know, I'm not going to go to the buttons right now and say, do you want more scritches? She's telling me right now, yes, I want more scritches. I'm staying right in this exact position. I'm frozen solid, waiting for you to give me more scritches. But being connected in with them on that level, being able to listen to their verbal and nonverbal cues. By verbal cues, I mean the things that they are requesting via the buttons, and honoring those, right? And exploring, like if you don't understand what they're saying, try it again, ask in a different way. See if there are other subtle signs that they are giving you that could give you an affirmative or a negative. Just get really curious. I mean, I'm going to come back to that again and again because I think so much of life is just about remaining curious and open. Okay, what's happening right now? What am I feeling? What are my senses picking up? What are these little creatures asking for? What are they saying no to and why? And how could I offer them something different? And she is still wanting head scritches.
She's there for it.
She's
She's
there
there
for
for
it.
it. It's so funny.
Yes.
Fitz is doing the same thing right here. He came up to me and was asking me to pet him. And when I stopped, he pushed his head back into mine. And now he's laying down on the floor waiting for me to pet him. And as I pet him and then pull my hand away, he'll look up at me like, would you please stop doing that? Like, please continue petting me.
Like, are you broken? Continue.
What
Yeah.
are you
And I
doing?
think I think too, when it comes to the buttons specifically, there's consent around that too. We want the experience of pressing buttons to be a very, very positive and never a sort of coercive experience. If someone made me talk, I wouldn't feel good about talking. So if your learner is not interested in using the buttons at any given moment, they don't want to opt into a modeling session, don't. Like, take it up a little bit later in the day. You don't have to do it now. It doesn't have to be on your schedule. It's really about allowing them the opportunity to give you the information that you really, really want in a new way with more precision.
Again, that's so important. Don't force your dog to use the buttons. Give your dog choice in whatever activity, whether it's pets, play, food. Give them the opportunity to say yes or no and always opt out. That's the most important message. Where do you hope that button communication and fluent pet research goes in the next, let's say, 10 years?
I definitely see the progress already. I can see the needle moving and I would like for that to continue. It's like a critical mass thing. The more people experience it for themselves, the more people are going to start to realize that this is a powerful tool, even if they only have 4 or 5 buttons. I think a non-human or a companion animal being able to advocate for itself, even with only 4 or 5 words, improves the clarity of communication and the depth of connection because it's offering choice, agency, and control to a captive animal. And many times captive animals don't get that. And it's not our fault. We have sort of been conditioned and indoctrinated into believing that working dogs work and house dogs are fluffy potatoes. And we feed them twice a day. We take them for one walk. We go at our speed and then we sit on the couch and we get to pet them, right? Even if they don't like pets. And I'm not saying that all people are like that. Obviously, that's a gross generalization, but I would really like to continue seeing that needle move in the direction of us trying to balance the scales in our relationships with companion animals, choice, agency, and control, depth of communication and connection. And obviously, I'd love to see more research come out because that helps us move the needle. But it really is a matter of more people experiencing this for themselves. Sometimes a skeptic will come to me and be like, there's no way. My dog barks at his own butt. Just try it. Try it. And if they try it for themselves, something shifts. It's like it's a mechanism for a shift in paradigm as I see it.
You can't make change without change happening, 100%. Before we dive into the wrap up, I always like to take a moment for something that I call answering the ask. Can you share a moment, a story with any of your dogs where the behavior was an ask that you hadn't ever heard or seen from your dog and how you responded by showing up different?
And you're talking just behaviorally and not with buttons?
You can specifically say buttons. I mean, we're talking about buttons.
I think there are a lot of examples that I could pull forth of that. But one thing that I didn't expect to have happen was for Bunny to advocate for the other dogs in my house. Like when Otter was a puppy, I mean, not only did she repeatedly use her UGG button to tell me how annoying he was, but then she was able to tell me twice as a puppy when he had an ear infection. She would say, Otter ear, ouch, or ear, Otter smell. And I would go and I would inspect his ear and he had an ear infection. And I think that's a really beautiful and powerful example of, who knows, maybe theory of mind. People don't like when I say theory of mind because we can't confirm or deny that dogs have theory of mind, but obviously they do. But thinking about your companion animal, not just like living in its little furry husk, but having thoughts and desires about other members of the family, having information that they would like to share about things they've done, places they'd like to go, injuries that their brothers or sisters might have is really, really powerful. And being able to communicate on that level is not a thing that I would have anticipated.
I remember that the video about her showing Otter with like telling you that he had an ear infection. I remember you talking about that. And it really is just very profound how much she has figured out how to communicate what she is thinking, what she's seeing to you. Because obviously, again, dogs explore with their noses. That is something that she can see and understand that you would never know until either he started scratching his ear a lot or maybe started walking with a head tilt or funny ear positions, things like that, that are more visual for us, where Bunny can catch that so much faster. It's like those scent dogs who identify cancer in people. If those dogs could just, push button and say, yep, this one, make things a lot easier, a lot
Can you
easier.
imagine a dinner party where your dog is like, Bestie has cancer? Don't know if you know this, but like, oh my God, dinner party ruined.
We need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. But I mean, there, again, just so many crazy things that if we could open our minds up to this, we could teach our dogs to be an alert system, precautionary tale for all kinds of things. It's
Yeah.
just wild to me. Geez. To close things out, I would love for you to leave the person listening with a little homework for humans. One small, doable action they can take this week to support their dog in a meaningful way. This would be maybe a great first step in button communication or how to choose consistent modeling or even a favorite word of yours that they could add in if they're already modeling.
I'll go with a tip that's pre-buttons because not every listener is going to have buttons already. But the first thing to do, and this is helpful if you never get buttons at all, is to talk to your learner. We know, although there are people on the internet who would debate this, that dogs do understand words. How many times have you had to spell the word walk or snack or whatever the case may be? So if you have a sensitive or reactive dog like I do, it has been so helpful being able to label things in her environment to give her some predictability. Predictability is huge. It's also huge for some of us neurodivergent folks out there. We like to know what to expect, what is coming. We like order and routine. That's certainly the case for me. And that's certainly the case for Bunny. So me being able to label big truck, big sound, this is stranger dog. This is friend. That is squirrel. This is big bird, all done concerned. Just using words around stimuli in ways that create a little bit of predictability. Words are a really great way to do that. Words are just sounds with repeated associated meanings. So it doesn't even matter what the word is. You could be speaking in gibberish, but if you say it at the same time, the same place, in the same context every day, it's going to take on some meaning and it'll help produce that predictability, which is so key. And then also the words that you're using regularly, if you do decide to get buttons, are words that you can put on the mat. And the more you're labeling things in your learner's environment, the more you are paying attention to the things that are important to them and the better you're getting to know them.
Absolutely. And it is so easy. Like I said before, I talk to my dogs all the time. And if you use certain words consistently, they are going to pick up on that and they do know what you mean. So when you say the O word, which I'm not going to say right now because it's going to get the other dog super excited and he's back there sleeping on the couch now. So I will take advantage of that. But there are certain words that I do have to spell. But I have found also that if I spell certain words too much, he still figures out what the heck I'm doing. So dogs are smart and we need to give them credit for it and just keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for being here today. Could you please leave a final message today?
Stay curious. That's the most important thing. Stay curious, stay open, stay grounded in what your mission is. For me, that's connection and communication. And that's sort of been the through line. But curiosity will take you a long, long way.
Amazing. Tell everybody where they can find you. Tell them how they can get a hold of your book and all of the wonderful things or a set of buttons.
Yeah. So you can go to fluent.pet for any number of buttons. Community.fluent.pet is where you will find limitless resources. We have courses, we have a free button boot camp. There's a huge community, there's troubleshooting and tips and videos to watch about getting started. My book, I Am Bunny, came out, I think it was last year. You can find it on Amazon. I recorded the audio version myself. The hard copy has got a lot of beautiful photographs in it. You can find that a lot of places, actually. You can find it at HarperCollins, Amazon. And me personally, you can find me on all social medias at What About Bunny.
Today, we heard how Bunny's journey with Fluent Pet started with one button and grew into a shared language. Alexis showed us the power of curiosity, structure, and listening differently, and reminded us that communication isn't about words, it's about connection. So remember, be kind, spread joy, and keep in mind, sometimes the conversation starts with you. Thank you for listening to The Dog Who Asked for More and for giving your dog this time through your learning. If your dog is bouncing off the walls, no matter how much you walk them, it can feel like nothing is ever enough. The truth is, most dogs don't need more exercise. They need the right kind of enrichment to settle their brains and their bodies. That's why I put together a free enrichment resource packed with easy, fun ideas that you can try right away. You'll find the link in the show notes. New episodes drop every Monday and Wednesday. I'll see you next time.